Every year, OTK seems to get into like some kind of drama, and this year seems to be no different because at the end of last year, an article came out kind of exposing the whole influencer scene altogether of being kind of scummy when it comes to charities, and you could almost argue it's like just like a downright scam just because of like how bad this is. And the craziest part about this is like the accusations against OTK were kind of vague because it's impossible to know the details unless contracts start getting leaked. So if they just responded like literally every other streamer did and been like, oh, I didn't know about all this beforehand, sorry, people would be making a big deal about it. But they didn't. They had, once again, a terrible response to drama. You think with like how often they get in drama, they'd be better at dealing with drama themselves. And like how often they farm drama, you think they would know what is a good and a bad response. So to start this all off, you have Jacob Wolf, who is like a reporter, who came out with a news story about soft giving. Now this article is long. I've read it all. I'm not going to read it all here. I'm just going to give a summary to like what's kind of important to OTK and Asmongold. So the article starts off pretty strongly accusing like OTK and a bunch of other influencers that they worked with of running this charity for Gamers for Love, or not running the charity, but like working with a charity, Gamers for Love, to raise a bunch of money. And they raised over $2 million. However, half of that money never made it to the actual charity itself, based on the public records. And now, to be clear, this accusation isn't really against Gamers for Love or Games for Love. It's against the middleman Softgiving. It goes on to say that Games for Love ended up raising like $6.2 million within a 2-year time period. However, 42% of that never made it to Games for Love. It made it to this Softgiving company. And if you don't know, Softgiving is essentially a middleman. They connected the charity with the influencers, and in doing so, they would take a fee. And this is where this reporter is claiming that all this extra money is going to. Like where this missing 42% went to, they're saying Softgiving took that. And that doesn't sound like that bad for like OTK. It's like, well, they can't really be held responsible for like a shady practice. Like how are they supposed to know what Softgiving was doing? That, like who would expect that, right? Except for the part where this missing 42% of money could also be going towards like contracts where they pay the influencer to run these charities. So now you have content creators like OTK and Ludwig and Justin Minks, like pretty much all the top creators, not that Justin Minks is a top creator, but you know what I'm saying, are profiting off the charity and taking money that's supposed to be going to the charity for themselves. And to make matters worse, during like these 2 years, it wasn't easy to find out that influencers were getting paid to do this, or like what percentage of donations were going to where. Which like when you work with a charity, it's usually pretty clear that X percent is going to the actual charity, and then like Y percent is going to like run the actual charity. And if you don't know, anything over like 10% of donations going to like run the actual charity instead of going to actually like help people is considered bizarre. And they're arguing that soft giving is taking 42%. That's before the money even makes it to the charity. And another thing that is shady that Softgiving did. So everybody, when they hear charity, they're like, oh, people are just doing that for the tax write-off, but that's like not how that works. And like the industry standard and like what Tiltify and Donut Drive, which also works with Twitch and is like part of like Twitch's recommended services. When an influencer uses like Tiltify or Donut Drive as like a middleman, or like a charity organizer for them, what happens is the money goes directly to the charity. It doesn't like sit in like a third party. However, for Softgiving, when you donate to one of the charities that the influencers are doing, it would go to like this third party foundation, and then that foundation would split up the charity funds, paying Softgiving, and then giving the rest to the charity. Which is weird, because when you get like another third party involved, there is a lot more room for shady things to happen, intentionally or unintentionally. Whereas with these other options that streamers could use, how it would work is that the money would go directly to the charity, but like the middleman, like Tiltify or Donor Drive, would simply be given a portion of that donation to themselves. And to be clear, the fees they take are 3.5 to 5%, unlike Softgiving's, who's been accused of up to 42% fee, which is insane. And then to make matters worse for Softgiving and people who use them, so people getting paid to put on charities happens. Usually it's frowned upon because it's usually rich people putting on these charities, and it's like you don't need to get paid more money to do these things. But at the end of the day, if you raise more money than you're paid, it's still like a net positive to society, so it's okay. However, another shady thing to do is do commission-based payments for influencers. So essentially saying like the more money you make or like the more money you raise for charity, the more money the influencer makes. It should just be like a flat fee. And if you look at like the watchdogs who like recommend which charities are good and which charities are bad, they say like commission-based structures are just bad and you should stay away from those charities. And it's really hard to distinguish between who got caught up in this like weird thing that they didn't understand and who was actually just doing scummy things. And it's harder to figure that out because there was like no disclosure on if they're being compensated or not in some cases. This was like an industry-wide problem because it's not just OTK. There was like over 700 influencers who have worked with Softgiving, and one of them being A-Drive raising like $388,000 using them, and then Ludwig raising $261,000. However, like that's over what, that's over like $600,000 for Games for Love. And yet it shows that they only got $180,000 in 2020 total. And those two events are nearly like triple that amount. And this is why when it goes to be like, Ludwig is smart and knows how to respond to these things, because he could respond like OTK did, or he could just be smart. And when he was reached for comment, he responded by just saying like, oh yeah, Softgiving wasn't exactly clear about how its arrangement with Games for Love worked. So, and there's no way that anybody can ever dispute that Ludwig knew that so much of the money wasn't going to the charity, because none of those like contracts between him and Softgiving are going to become public. So as long as there's no leaks, Ludwig's in the clear. He can just be like, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I thought I was doing something good. And then there was a very public thing with like Hasan, where he was doing a fundraiser for Turkey because of the earthquakes, and he raised like millions of dollars, and then he was being called a scam because he was using Softgiving, and there was like Twitter posts about how much Softgiving takes, so none of this money is actually making it to it. He found about it like live on stream. He started freaking out, and then it was clear that no, like all of the money was actually going to the charity in this case, which is why this stuff isn't black and white on if you use this service, you're a terrible person, because not in all cases it was bad. That being said, as Softgiving got more and more popular, and the longer and longer they've been around, their fees and services started going up and up and up. It used to be 80-20 in 2020, where they'd only take 20%. By the time it got to 2022, they're offering worse and worse splits, being like half and half. However, to show once again how confusing and how not black and white this is, the Hasan drama happened in 2023, and it was confirmed that 100% of the donations were going to Turkey, that Softgiving wasn't taking a fee at all. Now, Softgiving has responded and tried to like dispel some of the myths about this and just like how greedy they are. It said only 6% of the charities that they work with pay like an upfront fee for its services. 92% paid nothing, and then just 2% of people worked on like a commission-based structure. Now, this was for just the last year. It didn't address any of the earlier years. It didn't address like 2023 at all. It was saying that like streamers are actually getting paid a higher percent that Softgiving would take themselves. Then again, if there's like 2% of these campaigns that worked on commission-based structures were the ones that raised the majority of the money, it really doesn't matter that 92% of the other ones weren't on commission-based structure. And like it goes into more with like XQC and like Wiz Khalifa stuff and how like their charity drive fell short. Like this is actually like a really good article that if you haven't read it, you should read. But I feel like I've given like a good enough baseline on how this works and why this is like so complicated to read through. So let's just get to the OTK stuff, because the OTK stuff is the only one where their response was bad enough where I thought a video should be made about it. So OTK was once again called out specifically for their weightlifting stream. Now, to be clear, I did not watch this weightlifting stream because it sounded extremely boring to me watching a bunch of dudes lift weights. Who cares? But it raised $140,000 for Games for Love. However, it didn't disclose how the donations were broken down. After the fact, though, they did add a disclaimer to the donation page, which is, you see here, they made $140,000 now. The thing about this disclosure, even the disclosure is bad. It doesn't tell you anything really at all. It just says, pursuant to an agreement between Softgiving and nonprofit may compensate Softgiving. Pursuant to an agreement between Softgiving and influencer may be compensated by Softgiving. For more information, see Softgiving's terms of service. But again, the terms of service doesn't break down their individual contracts with OTK. So we have no idea if OTK was paid for it, was paid in a commission structure, or if they weren't paid at all. Which is why when you do charity things, it's just best to be super upfront about everything, because if you don't, it can look super shady like this. And Softgiving, just to end the stuff with them, is they also came out and said they no longer do commission-based contracts at all. So then people went to Asmongold and was like, hey, you guys are being accused of funneling a bunch of charity money that should have been going to charity to yourselves. You're rich millionaire streamers. Why are you stealing charity money? People may not like Hasan, but at least he doesn't steal charity money. And this was Asmongold's response.
Some huge allegations were made about against you and OTK streamers. Well, who gives a shit? Somebody makes an allegation against me and now somehow I have to respond to it? No, I don't have to say anything. Oh, a big allegation. Oh no. Oh wow. Who gives a f? What am I gonna sit here like and try to, I'm gonna try to defend myself and explain it to people? No, there's no reason to.
So on one hand, I agree to a point because like everybody knows the best way to get through a controversy is just put your chat in like sub-only mode and keep doing and ignore it till it like slips away and people forget about it. Because it worked for Giant Waffle with his accusations, and his accusations were way more serious, and he still has a great career because he just ignored it all and did his thing, and people forgot about it. Well, people didn't forget about it, but his fans didn't care enough to stop watching him, so he still has a career. And everybody else got bored and they moved on, right? But to me, the response is so easy. Just say what Ludwig did. Oh yeah, we weren't aware of Softgiving's practices, but we're still going to keep doing like charity streams because we want to help people, and that's all we were trying to do. Because no one can prove whether or not they were the ones getting paid commissions or they were the ones getting paid up front to do all these charities, because none of those contracts got leaked. Unless, of course, they're scared that this reporter has more contracts, because he did have some contracts. And if they come out and say, hey, we had no idea what we're doing, it's not on us, it's on Softgiving, hates Softgiving, and then this reporter comes out with the receipts, it's going to be really bad for them. And it's also kind of ironic that he doesn't want to talk about like charity drama when he also spent this long talking about another person's charity drama. But to be fair to him, he continued to explain why he wasn't going to talk about the charity.
But no, I'm fully aware that that people are always going to have some sort of accusation against me. Oh, I did this, I did that. I'm a scammer, I'm like something else or whatever, I'm a bad person, I'm a racist. Like this, guys, here's the thing. I don't go out of my way to actively shut this stuff down because any reasonable person that looks into it will see the truth of it.
So he's saying he's not going to respond to this because if people look into it and if they're reasonable, they'll agree with me. If you don't agree with me, you're unreasonable, you're crazy, you're stupid. Like, that is such like a stupid argument. And he should have just said he's not going to respond at all. And I'll have to add that if he was not actually going to respond to it.
There's no reason for me to be like, oh, well, I've got to prove it to them and make sure. Because here's the truth, right? Is that I look at a lot of people like this. I look at them like dogs. And the more that you try to prove them wrong, in the same way that the more that you try to pull a toy out of a dog's mouth, the harder the dog is going to bite down on that toy. And at the end of the day, the people that try to accuse me of doing this kind of stuff have already made up their mind that I'm a piece of shit.
So I can understand if he was like talking about people like me, because like saying like I'm a drama farmer, because I am. But like to be clear, I do not have my mind made up on whether or not they're terrible people for this, because I don't know. But I don't think you can say this reporter who spent a year doing this story and put out a really thoughtful article and laid everything out that you know is some kind of dog just looking and has like made up his mind about you and is like trying to take you down because he hates you. It sounds like he was doing a story on really bad charity practices in the influencer scene, and OTK just happened to get caught up in it with it, as well as over 700 other influencers.
So I'm never going to be able to just like explain to them why I'm not a piece of shit, and them to be like, of course I was wrong all along. Yeah, you can't change an argument devoid of logic. That's right.
So again, if you disagree with me, you're illogical. There is no way to change these people's minds because they're illogical. I don't think you can look at that report by the reporter and say that he's being illogical. If they weren't getting paid a fee, if they weren't taking like a commission to do these charities, they could come out and say that. They could provide receipts. I'm sure Softgiving would love one of the largest influencers to come out and be like, hey, all of those hundreds of thousands of dollars that we raised for Softgiving, it all went to the charity. We didn't take a large chunk. We weren't lying to our fans who donated these hundreds of thousands of dollars with the thought that they're going to charity, and then they really weren't. It is such like a disingenuous argument to say that anybody who disagrees with me is illogical. So there's no reason, there's no way that I can actually defend myself, because no matter what, they're going to think this thing. If this was like a random accusation in Twitch chat, or like someone like me just trying to like cause drama, I could understand saying like, hey, they're just trying to get clout. They're just making stuff up. They're just trying to take me down to get like views. I don't think you spend all that time, like over a year, making this article, talking to other like charity watchdogs on like common practices and all this, to expose how bad it seems like Softgiving was running their middleman services just to try to take down OTK. Because like, even though Ludwig worked with them, and it seems like a lot of the money that was donated to Ludwig didn't make it to the charity, it doesn't seem like they're trying to take down Ludwig, because he responded in a reasonable manner. He wasn't just saying, oh, everybody who disagrees with me is wrong, stupid, and a dog, and they're just trying to take me down. There's no possible way I can defend myself against that, because no matter what I say, isn't going to change their mind. Doesn't seem to be the case, because in this article, you have like the same accusation against Ludwig, and you don't have the same vitriol coming out against Ludwig, because the response seemed reasonable and logical. Then again, when you have an organization trying to control Reddits, of like trying to get them to take down posts that make you or your company look bad, and like threatening the moderators when they don't respond to you, it makes it really funny when you try to claim to be the logical one and not just an organization trying to cover up their shady practices.